Welcome to this evening's version of Merrily Marrowed Mermaid Storytime. Today we are going to read an excerpt from Wake of the Red Witch by Garland Roark, who is, his description of himself is just wonderful. You have to hear this. It's seldom nowadays do readers have such an opportunity to lose themselves in the world of high adventure, furious conflict, and tropical romance. The author is a writer with an enormous storytelling capacity, which he has used without restraint in this book. Truly, there is much to be heard. So I flipped through and I found this wonderful passage we are going to read, but careful, it's a little sultry. For an hour, all she heard was Rawl's low moan, his babbling. "It took something out of me," he said, over and over. Then, out of his coma, he slept. All the while the defeated, but not vanquished, Frenchmen had remained outside the chief's hut with the chief and the horde of jubilant natives, the triumphant master of Batjack, his lieutenants and hirelings. And during that hour, Angelique had labored over the son of Taro-Tiki, murmuring soothing words and applying strips of cloth and portions of Quirinua's and potion. Let me read that again. And during that hour, Angelique had labored over the son of Taro-Tiki, murmuring soothing words and applying strips of cloth and potions of Kiruina's balm. The sun had long since set, and the myriad stars, popping into view in the matchless dome of a tropical sky, were ordered into subordinate position by the splendor of a gibbous moon. Pale shafts of light were thrown down on Rawls, who had slept peacefully for almost an hour. "No," she had said in a peremptory manner. "I want no help, no company. I can best treat him if left alone." He lay on his back on a fiber mat. Once his eyes opened, then their leaden curtains fell again. He was bruised about the shoulders, arms, and neck, ugly purplish-red wheals against dotted blisters of blood, and his abdomen was slashed a half an inch deep in a running wound below his navel. She dared not look further, though his hand ran to the joining of right leg and torso. On hands and knees she surveyed her work, pronounced it good, then gazed at a face within the foot of her own. She murmured, "I have never seen a man like you." And then without pause, she slowly lowered her body to hip and elbow, and pressed her face to his. Softly she caressed the fascinating stubble, moved nearer to the feel of his mouth and forehead with her hands and warm, loose lips. A thin moan escaped her as her breath steamed his cheeks, and pressing the side of her lips to his, she fell flat to his side and dreamed sweetly of that which she held close. Her hand moved to his neck, to his chest, and there it lingered while she drank in the savage magic of wide arch ribs. To woman he belonged, and to that woman who found him the world must bow in envy and respect. How fierce were his kisses, how strong were his arms. Strangely she fathomed mysteries, viewing the eternal spring, the jungle lake from which sucked the bird of paradise, the moon, the stars. Her contentment could only begin in his arms. The soothing qualities of his mysterious being called in a voice stranger than the winds, than the pounding of the incessant surf, rhythmically but louder and louder. She felt the surge of her blood, the very fusion of their spirits as her arm encircled him. "Oh, Rawls, my Rawls!" she exclaimed. She whispered, actually. I made up the excitement part. Out of nowhere came his answer. "Angelique, I love you." As if His words explained all. "Then why," she said in a pleading tone, "didn't you claim me?" In a moment, he was awake. He sat up, shaking his head, then stared at her. He asked that she repeat the question. She did. After long moments, he said, "Because you're one thing in this world I've learned to love, and the barrier to our happiness must be conquered by me, not by you." "I don't understand," she said, perplexed. "You wouldn't. But it's there. Tell me, my dear, could you find joy in torturing me?" "I don't understand," she repeated. "Then I won't explain," he said gruffly, rising to his feet. He stood perplexed, his legs unsteady. Then he lay down once more. "But remember, Angelique, I love you. I'll win, remember that. And then I'll come for you. Now let me sleep." Long minutes passed in which he held her hand. Then he was up again, stretching his muscles and testing his legs. He grinned, saying he felt as good as new. Suddenly she was standing before him. "Oh, Rawls," she said, smiling up at him, her hands clasping his. "It's getting good, huh?" "I'll wait for you forever." She stood, awaiting his arms and lips, but he did not take her in his arms. He merely stared deep inside her, his expression ironical, accusing, and questioning. At a moment when he should have answered her call, he said, "You might have to wait forever. No, Angelique, you'd do better with Sydney." A sharp frown erased her smiles. "Rawl, why ever did you wear the white flower above your ear? Why did you remove it? I don't understand." Her eyes begged for answer, received nothing but emptiness. "What do you have to conquer that's stronger than love?" "The devil himself," snapped Rawls. "Then the devil is bigger than our love? If you feel that way, you don't love me." Out of unsolved mysteries, out of deeper humiliation, she grasped at the props of anger. But that, too, was evanescent. Lowering her eyes, she sighed heavily. She said slowly, in resigned tone, "As another man's wife, I'll have nothing to do with you." How sincerely she spoke, how ludicrously positive, as if a woman could know her mind. But in the face she read of amusement, of love, bold, daring, and certain. Of rescue? He repeated, "I love you, Angelique." In her upturned face, understanding and compassion vied with the enigmatic, dwarfing the pains of rejection and its aftermath, anger. It seemed her eyes made a gallant attempt at a smile, while placing a value on her loss. Rawls suddenly lifted her into his arms and took several steps towards the opening. Then he halted abruptly. The startled expression in her eyes was short-lived. Her face radiated dreamy contentment, and her arms instinctively circled his neck. In another moment their lips joined, and she no longer tried to solve mysteries. It was another long, sweet moment without... What's going on? In another moment their lips joined, and she no longer tried to solve mysteries. It was a long, sweet moment that outdistanced eternities, in which his arms were strong pillars that defeated his words, his lips divine echoes of refutation. Then he said, "My darling, my darling." Her answer was a hungry whisper, "Rawls," and she held his face close to hers in an eloquent invitation to a second embrace. And, with no will to resist her, he obeyed, until he could no longer shut out visions of a beast, armed with a whip, an eternal creeper, himself. Out of the long moment, out of the long kiss, he lowered her gently to her feet, then stalked to the opening of the hut. Almost savagely he said, "The feast awaits us." That is just a mere sample of this a fantastic book. I actually have not read this book, but I feel like this is gold mine. So let's, I just want to, we're gonna flip to a random other page because this is too much fun. Mynheer Shorttail, he said, and his face was pleasant for once. I have a proposition for your ears. Proceed, Sydney boy, said the big man in a facetious fastidious? In some sort of manner. I shall. As you know, I do not like you, short-tailed Borneo. My dislike goes even further. I hate your goddamn soul, I do. Must I cry? Said Coiter, leaning against the rail and tossing a wink at the bearded seaman. Not yet, Mynheer Shorttail. I propose that the two of us, armed with a knife each, go overboard. One of us won't return. No, one of us will feed the hungry sharks out there. Coiter's sandy brow contracted and the lids narrowed over washed blue. Was the lad serious? Then he threw back his head and laughed long and hard. Rheingold walked over from the starboard side and, after solicitous inquiry, bellowed mirthfully. Myrant stood his ground and gave the ribaldry a steady pace. Too quickly the laughter subsided, giving place to glances of concern over the shoulders of Myrant. The lad realized Captain Mear was walking towards them. But he had found a new bliss, a new reason for living, and the captain could do what he pleased and be damned afterwards. Well, short-tail Borneo? Quiet, fool, the captain. Myrant raised his voice in answer. Captain or no captain, Short-tail, do you have the guts? Captain Mear strode into the group, his eyes flashing fire. Every man save Myrant exuded in some manner or another. I fucking hate this man's language. Obsequiousness? Rheingold's eyes darted about for a task needing a hand, and Telp bowed as if he had tail curled between his legs, while Coiter removed his elbows from the rail. Others found their hands ungovernable, and his nervous tools of no use. They fawned before their master like dogs, thought Myrant. How glorious it was to be free of that fear. Sydney! Thundered the captain. Did you receive word that I wanted you? Aye, Bosmere, I did. And what kept you? His tone bespoke certain retribution. Except for the captain's eyes, Myrant would have missed no part of it. The proposition, Bosmere. One I just made. This man who has nothing but One I just made this man who has nothing but corruption for guts. Since I hate him more than any of the rest of you, not much more, but enough to choose him first, I challenged him to leap overboard with knives. I'm waiting for his answer. Stefan, unused to showing... This is ridiculous. Unused to any show of disobedience and slightly bemused at the sudden gravity of the lad's tone and expression, slowly placed a forefinger and thumb in a pincher grasp upon his chin. His eyes traveled the boy appraisingly. In easier tone, he said, Are you not aware of the laws of the sea, Sydney? That I am, Mynheer Bus. But I've been goaded too far. Laws be damned when it's a matter of defense. I could knife him in the back, but instead I choose a fair fight. Look at him, Bus. A worthless hulk who slaves to let the other man carry his share. And you would go overboard in a school of sharks with him, knowing that one drop of blood would be the death of both of you. I would, Bus. Unless he agrees, don't be surprised if he's missing one of these days. I warn you, by the God in heaven, I warn you. His tone was anything but trifling. Rather, it converged hate and lost patience with an ominous expression of fanatical determination, a trait none among them had ever imagined a part of the boy. But his words hung mast high and heavy as the leaden calm. That's all I got, man. This book is intense. Thank you for joining me for Mermaid Story Hour. We'll meet again the next time we want. I'll see you next time for our next dramatic reading. Thank you again.